What's good, YouTube? In this video, we'll be taking a look at why people still love and want to have physical keyboards on their smartphones. If you like this kind of content, leave a message down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching. So, BlackBerry is done with phones. We have no word of some kind of 5G BlackBerry, as all of that was shut down last year with the shuttering of both BlackBerry servers and any kind of support for BlackBerry 10 devices. That's not to say, though, that physical keyboards are non-existent on the market. We still have Unihertz, which produces an excellent range of phones running Android that have physical keyboards. And I think what this proves, and what isn't talked about enough, is the fact that there's still a huge demand in the market for phones with physical keyboards. People still love being able to feel the key presses on a mobile device, and I'll be going over several reasons why in this video physical keyboards should have some kind of presence in the smartphone marketplace. With modern smartphones all adopting virtual keyboards, it's hard to think of the reason why people would still want to use physical keyboards, but there still is a very loyal fan following of BlackBerry users and other people that are still wanting to have a tactile feedback when typing on their phone. Even though touchscreens and virtual keyboards enjoy widespread popularity, there seems to be no need for physical keyboards. However, there's still a very strong presence of users online that are fans of physical keyboards, and here are some reasons why. The first is typing comfort and speed. One of the major reasons why some people might prefer an actual physical QWERTY keyboard as opposed to a virtual one is that physical keyboards with their individual keys offer a lot more tactile feedback when pressed. This can, depending on the user, make typing easier and more accurate. It can be especially helpful when users struggle with typos on virtual keyboards. Albeit, the virtual keyboards that we find on our iPhones and Android phones these days are a lot better in terms of accuracy and typos. But for those of you that remember, it wasn't so long ago where it was nearly impossible to type out a proper sentence at any kind of normal speed on a virtual keyboard. And all of this can be avoided with just having a physical keyboard. Users can feel each individual keystroke and when each individual keystroke is registered. Also, physical keyboards are designed to be used for extended periods of time, which can make it a lot more comfortable when typing out longer documents, which you don't see too much these days on virtual keyboards. So if you're looking for comfort or typing longevity, then a physical keyboard offers a lot of advantages that a virtual one doesn't offer. On top of this, a lot of physical keyboards, including BlackBerry's and the new lineup from Unihertz, have dedicated functions and keys, so you can actually trigger a keypad on the physical keyboard a lot more easily than if you have to do it on a virtual keyboard. A lot of people just prefer being able to hold down a button and then being able to access your quick access, symbols, or numbers, as opposed to switching out to that mode on a virtual keyboard. This can make typing and typing between your standard alphabet and symbols and numbers a lot easier when you actually have physical keyboards to toggle between the two different modes. For me, it's always been a more natural extension of an actual PC or computer keyboard, where you actually have to physically hold down the Shift key or the Alt-Tab key or other keys in order to access other modes of the keyboards. Having to press that button or to switch between different keyboards on a virtual keyboard for me was always something that wasn't as intuitive as having a dedicated button, a physical one where I can depress and access these modes much more quickly. So one of the biggest reasons why I still think there's a pretty strong appetite for physical keyboards is this typing comfort and speed, as even though virtual keyboards have come a long way since their original inception, there's still certain things in terms of speed and comfort that they can't match with a physical keyboard. The next reason why people might prefer physical keyboards as opposed to virtual ones is something that might not be so obvious, and that is screen size and placement. With virtual keyboards, usually what happens is you toggle some kind of field and the virtual keyboard will pop up on your screen. This will take up the lower 1/4 of your screen, and the screen and things on your screen will adjust their position accordingly in order to accommodate the virtual keyboard. With a physical keyboard, there's no need for this, as the keyboard is always there and the screen placement will always be what the screen placement is. Of course, screen sizes on virtual keyboard phones have increased a lot more over the years, and the amount of screen real estate that you have access to certainly isn't as limiting as it once used to be. It wasn't that long ago, only a few generations of iPhones ago, when the virtual keyboard would pretty much take up nearly half of your screen, and it would be very difficult to navigate the remainder of the screen or whatever text field you were intending on typing in. Under these circumstances, with these smaller screen sizes of generations past, physical keyboards offered an obvious advantage, is that you wouldn't take up half of your screen real estate in order to actually have a keyboard and be able to have input onto your phone. This isn't so much a problem with these modern phones and flagships, which are well beyond 6 inches in size, as I think that with the latest iPhone 14 Pro Max, even with a virtual keyboard deployed, you still have ample room to navigate whatever text field you're navigating in. But there still is that shift of when you actually engage a text field where the whole browser or the whole app does move around, and you don't have this jarring shift with a physical key. This may seem like a small, minute detail, but when you're doing things like editing a document or word processing for long periods of time, and you have to constantly jump between the virtual keyboard being on and off and the screen or your word processor moving around on your screen, this can really affect productivity. So having a virtual keyboard does offer certain disadvantages in this regards. With a physical keyboard, you get a dedicated space for typing and a dedicated space for screens, and your eye won't have to adjust where the typing will go and where your words will go and where the keyboard is currently located. I find that having a virtual keyboard allows me to better focus on compiling a document or compiling an email, and actually editing and going back and adjusting certain editing when I need to. Everything is right where it should be, just like on a computer, as opposed to a virtual keyboard where if you jump back and forth between editing and typing, the things move around a little bit more. So the second advantage of why people prefer physical keyboards can be summed up in the fact that with a physical keyboard, your keyboard isn't going anywhere, and your document and email is also not going anywhere, and you can make edits knowing exactly where things should be. The next reason why a lot of people prefer physical keyboards is actually somewhat obvious, and that's functionality. With physical keyboards, you get over 20 additional physical keys on your phone. Most of the time, they can be programmed to do different tasks as well. So apart from the typing, where the physical keys actually add a lot of functionality, speed, and shortcuts with the typing, you also get these physical keys which you can program to do different things on your phone. Many people will remember with Blackberries, or even with the new Unihertz lineup, that each individual key can actually be programmed to open up an app, open up a specific setting, or open up a specific shortcut on your phone. With certain Unihertz phones with physical keyboards offering Android, there are a bunch of third-party apps where you can actually program shortcuts and little scripts into your phone, so you can add these shortcuts to these physical keyboards as well, making the complexity of the tasks that you can do just from depressing one of the keys on your physical keyboard endless. So when you compare it with a modern phone, which really will only have at tops 3 or 4 physical buttons, a phone equipped with a virtual keyboard will have a lot more functionality in terms of having over 20 physical buttons that you can individually program for different tasks. One of the nicest things about the new Unihertz phones is that, much like the old Blackberries, there's a dedicated physical back button and a dedicated app switcher button. This is a true joy to use, as even though Android and iPhone offer gestures and virtual buttons to do this, just having a physical button to do this makes browsing or switching between apps a lot more tactile and more responsive, in my opinion. Another thing to take note is that with the last generation of BlackBerry phones, BlackBerry offered that very nifty touch sensor right on the physical keyboard itself, so you could actually use gestures on the physical keyboard where you could swipe up or down to scroll up or down a web page, and even double tap on the physical keyboard on several models, and this could be programmed to do different things on your phone. This is just another element where your fingers aren't moving over the actual screen and concealing whatever you're trying to navigate, and another obvious advantage in terms of functionality with a physical keyboard as opposed to a virtual one. The physical keyboard also gives you a dedicated space on screen for things like auto-suggest or other functions of a keyboard that normally wouldn't be on a virtual keyboard. So to sum it up, in terms of functionality, there are several advantages of a physical keyboard as opposed to a virtual one. That includes being able to program buttons, having things like touch sensors. I actually think that technology in this part of a physical keyboard hasn't been fully developed, and it's unfortunate that there really isn't a stronger driver to develop this technology, as the touch sensor on these Unihertz phones underneath the physical keyboard that originally started with the Blackberries is quite nifty, and I would have loved to see what future generations of Blackberries would have offered in this space. The last reason why people prefer physical keyboards over virtual ones is a simple reason, and that is nostalgia. It wasn't a time too long ago where Blackberries were everywhere. BlackBerry just simply dominated the smartphone market, particularly in the business and productivity space, and they had up to 20% of the global market share of smartphones. If you were on BlackBerry Messenger, or if you just enjoyed messaging people, or if you ever used your phone for work, then you were most likely doing it on a BlackBerry with a physical keyboard. So for a lot of us, physical keyboards were the first phones or the first smartphones that we had, and there's simply a nostalgic factor in terms of having a physical keyboard and being able to type on one hand or even two hands, even if you're doing things that modern smartphones with virtual keyboards can do better, like sending a quick text or email. It's just having those buttons underneath your thumb. It just feels right, and it feels like you're using a phone the way you should. Of course, there's a lot of people that have moved on, and much like how the market has adapted, a lot of people switched over to iPhone and Android. But that's not to say that there isn't a demand, or there aren't a group of people in the market that wouldn't embrace the physical keyboard, because this wouldn't be the first time they're using it. It's really kind of unfortunate that BlackBerry just failed to adopt Android and touchscreens as much as they did on the later generations of Blackberries, like the Key 2, as late as they did. I think if they had done so, a lot of people that are used to physical keyboards would have gladly purchased a BlackBerry with full Android support, as you're really combining the best of both worlds. You're getting all the functionality of the apps of Android with a full touchscreen, and you're getting all the functionality of a physical keyboard as well that people have gotten used to and people have learned to use smartphones on. So there you have it, everyone. There's a myriad of reasons why I think there's a very strong community still of people that would still want and would love to use a physical keyboard on a smartphone. And the reasons driving this are that you can type a lot more comfortably and quickly and efficiently on a physical keyboard, particularly if you came up in the early 2000s and 2010s typing on a BlackBerry. And also the fact that the physical keyboard itself adds a lot of functionality in terms of the physical keys being able to do customizable actions on your phone. And of course, the third reason is the fact that physical keyboards don't take up nearly as much screen space as on a virtual keyboard, and you don't have to shift your eye around when doing things like word processing and email. So what do you think? Do you still think there's a market for physical keyboards, or are there any other reasons why you would prefer a physical keyboard over a virtual one, such as being able to type without looking down at the screen? Give us your own experience, and give us your own experiences in terms of how you began using either virtual keyboards or physical keyboards, and if you think that virtual keyboards have actually outpaced the technology of physical keyboards. If you like this kind of content, leave a message down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.